Hello, and welcome back to another jam-packed episode of the Hammercast. I'm your host, Alex, the Hebrew Hammer Salkin, and joining me again is, I think he was on the 40th or 50th episode, so it's been a little while since he's been on, but my good friend, and soon to be yours, Mike Musselman. I should say Dr. Mike Musselman. He is a very talented chiropractor who lives somewhere in undisclosed location, Minnesota. And I don't know if you're watching this on YouTube, you'll see a really cool like mountainous background as well. So he's also got Zoom skills. So he's man knows his stuff. We're going to be talking about a number of topics today that I think are topics that really need somebody who's been there, done that, and has the education to enlighten us a little bit. And one of the things is going to be neck position in your training. Now, I know that for a lot of people, this doesn't sound like it's all that interesting or whatever, but there is a debate for whatever reason raging in the personal training world about neck positions. So we're going to talk about that. And in particular, we're going to talk a lot about the use of original strength for increasing and improving your performance as you hit your 40s, 50s, and beyond. And Mike is a perfect example of that on a number of levels. So I'm very much looking forward to diving in. And one last thing before we begin on the topic of original strength and getting strong and performing well. If you have not already, I highly recommend you get my 9-minute kettlebell and bodyweight challenge. It is comprised of several gait pattern movements, such as crawling, loaded carries, and a few other things that are meant to be done in conjunction with your regular training. So you don't have to put your normal workouts off to the side. You can simply put this in as a beginning of your training, or you can put it in as a finisher, however you'd like. But a lot of people have told me that it's really enhanced their training quite a bit. And I'd be willing to bet it would do the same for you. So go to 9minutechallenge.com. That is the number 9minutechallenge.com. And you can get your own very free copy. Now, how free is it? You might be asking. Freer than the 4th of July, my friend. So, Mike, if you don't have it, you should also just do yourself a favor and get it. Because, I know you like free stuff. Just at the bank, you told me. So I know that they're probably nickeling and diming you to death.
I was just waiting for a little old lady. I kind of felt bad, and then the bank teller didn't know how to send the thingy to me, and I was like,
"Oh, you were in the car."
Yeah, I was in the car. I don't like to go in because yes, the next thing you know, they want you to pay a bill or something, and then you don't have any money.
Yeah, you don't know. I don't know if you knew this, but without your consent or knowledge, we put an interest payment that you owe us now. Not that we're paying you, and why don't you hand that money over?
Yeah. Wait, you've been to my bank.
Yeah, exactly. Yes. We do a lot of business there. So, well, thank you for coming back on the show. I know we've talked a couple times over the last, I don't know, a couple months or so about getting you back on. So it's good to have you here.
Well, I appreciate it. It's always fun to be able to chat, I think. Absolutely. Is the proper term. Catch up.
That's the proper nomenclature, as they say. Yeah, last time, I think last time we saw each other face to face, you were here in Omaha.
I was actually, and my girls still talk about you, Alex. In fact,
really?
I said, I'm like, I'm doing a podcast, and they get all excited because they think it makes me famous, and I'm like, I'm not really any more cool than I already was. I'm like, it's with Alex, and then I usually get the who's Alex, and it's the older two are like Alex from Omaha, and so they remember like you coming and eating all of our food and meeting them. And
yeah, I don't even remember that part. I mean, it sounds exactly like something I would do, but that's just such a frequent occurrence that I'll go meet people and then
it was great because we were there for the 4th of July and we were celebrating Megan, our number 3 daughter's birthday. Yeah. You wouldn't have any of her cake because you figured out it makes you feel like crap to eat that stuff.
Yeah, I love it, but
you ate my chicken and turkey sausage. You ate a whole bunch of that.
I do vaguely remember.
Yeah. But it's all right because we offered it to you because that's what food's food. It's good for you, and you should share food.
Correct. Exactly. It doesn't do you any good to just rat hole away and then, and on a long drive, you can't, it's just going to go bad. So.
Exactly. So I appreciate you helping us out. I'd hate to have to bring that all the way back to Minnesota.
Yeah. Yeah. Anything for you, my man. Very happy to help out. Well, no, I'm glad I made such an impression. Yeah. Well, one of these days you'll have to get back out here. I think you were out here to see like the Mormon Trail. Something.
Yeah, we came out and saw that some. Yep. Because my ancestors went through there. In fact, my ancestors helped build that city, and then they left it and went farther west. So
yeah. Now, is it true that they built this city on rock and roll?
Yes, in fact, that's one of the main tenets of our faith is rock and roll.
Right. Well, at least of original strength, because there's rocking, there's rolling,
Exactly.
falling.
Exactly.
So that's huge, very huge. We'll jump in a second, but I have to tell you this. I went and visited a friend. He and his wife moved into this new house. I think probably a year or so ago. I just haven't been there. But as I was driving up, there's a street in Omaha. I kid you not, called. It's like on the far. It's like really far out north, but it's called Mormon Street. And I was like, oh, I got to get a picture of this so I can send to Mike. And I didn't get the picture, but I'm telling you now.
Now, I might have to come just to get a picture by the sign, just for fun.
If you come here, we're stealing the sign. There's no, I'm not sending you back with, like chicken and turkey sausages again. This time you're going to take a sign that says Mormon.
That's just a joke to the city streets department.
If no, it isn't.
Missing.
That's why I said Mike lives in undisclosed location, Minnesota, so that you can't track him down. I will go down for this crime. I will take the fine, for public destruction of property or whatever.
Well, I appreciate that.
Of course. We'll consider it an early and last birthday gift, because I feel like if I do that for you, I'm off the hook for buying you birthday gifts forevermore.
Ooh, I like that.
Yeah.
Well, if you give me the 9-minute free workout, that's a pretty good gift right there too.
All right, good. So will that get me off the hook? That's the real question.
You have to hook. No more birthday presents. I mean, you haven't given me one yet, but hey, you'll never have to give me one in the future either.
Exactly. Good. So the tradition will be kept alive of me not buying you anything for your birthday.
Sweet.
I look forward to it. Good. Well, I want to start off in particular because I want to get this one just completely out of the way. Folks who are listening, you are normal people, so I do not expect you to have heard this navel gazing argument, but I will give you some background because you need to know. So for whatever reason, and for quite a long time, there has been a discussion among personal trainers about neck position in certain movements. And there's one camp that says it's okay to extend your neck. Extend would basically be like if you're sitting up, it just means like looking upward. That's like that movement that happens in your neck. We'll call it just generically, that's extension. Okay. There's a little bit more to it, but that's essentially what it comes down to. Then you have other people who are advocates of what's called a packed neck, which is where, well, Mike, why don't you explain this part a little bit? So
well, packed neck, basically you're doing what's called cervical retraction. Mm-hmm. So you're pulling the neck backwards. So just translating it straight backwards. That's the best way to describe it. And then
kind of like making a double chin, right?
Yes, but they're saying you have to keep your chin tucked, and you're basically almost into flexion if you look at how they do it at the upper cervical spine. And they're doing it to activate the deep neck flexors to provide stability in the cervical spine. My question is why your deep neck flexors so weak would be my first question. Mm-hmm. That you have to artificially do that. And I'm sure I'll get pushed back and people say, you don't know what you're talking about. Blah. Great. I guess I don't. I mean, I just deal with this stuff on a regular basis, but it makes zero sense. You're creating an artificial, it's an artificial crutch. Why don't you do something to strengthen the deep neck flexors? Would be a much smarter thing to do, in my opinion. Mm-hmm. And there's some simple ways to do that we teach in Original Strength, obviously. But that's their whole point, is that they need to keep that the neck packed to provide some sort of stability that I believe it's going to translate into better core stability, which is one of my least favorite words on the planet, and give you a better lift, which I have some questions from a neurological standpoint for those people. Number one, are we programmed to have the eyes lead the head, or are we not programmed that way? Mm-hmm. So if I'm looking down, I still remember, guy that I consider a mentor and former coach, James Burdett, the guy holds like world records in multiple weight classes at bench press. He's a 1,000-pound plus squatter. So he's a pretty strong dude, in the 220s. And if he catch you looking down when you're squatting, it was always funny because he'd be like, what are you looking for? Because the only thing you're going to see on the floor is failure. And he's making the point, and it actually makes a lot of sense if you look at it from a neurological standpoint. And if you just watch someone lift, watch someone that packs their head and keeps their eyes down, and watch how their hips rise before their shoulders do. They all put this little glitch in there. Now, I'm going to say something that'll like freak everybody out. I'm not saying that's good or bad at this point, because we have this thing of like, this is good and this is bad. Well, why are we putting a moral judgment on a movement? Is it efficient or is it inefficient? Am I putting myself in a position to be successful, or am I putting myself in a position where I'm more likely to be injured? Your hips rise before your shoulders. There's some issues with that. Now, if you're going to try to counter that with, well, it's neurologically, if you want to counter with me, say, well, when I retract my cervical spine, that actually initiates firing of the posterior chain, which you're exactly right. So it's going to fire the spinal erector muscles and actually could put you in a much better position. Then you need to figure out, where do my eyes need to go? And if my eyes go up, it's okay if my chin rises a little bit. I think one of the issues, Alex, that I think people see is they can't find the happy medium in there.
Mm-hmm.
They either want it like no extension, or you have the other people that I think hyperextend that you don't need to hyperextend either. And it's not necessarily even hyperextension of the neck. It's just full-fledged extension that I don't think necessarily is necessary as well.
Yeah.
And yeah, throwing your head all the way back and looking at the ceiling, is there a chance you could increase injury? I think there is there as well too, but it's because it's an extreme, right? We're not playing how the body works. And I still say, go back and watch your kid crawl, watch your kid learn to stand up, and watch what their head does. Because if you do that, it gives us some really, really, really good ideas of maybe how we should be.
Mm-hmm.
And the reality is, you could pack your neck, I guess, if you want to call it that. You can retract your cervical spine, which actually, if you watch all the good power lifters, like an Ed Cohn, Andy Bolton, any of those guys that, now I'm so old that I'm aging myself, because those are the old time good lifters. I should probably start naming newer ones. That being said, I don't care. Watch them do it. They set up for a deadlift. They set up at the bottom of a squat. Their eyes sure the hell aren't on the floor, like 6 feet out in front of them. Their head isn't. They actually, they retract their cervical spine to initiate that movement, just like a good Olympic lifter does if you watch them. And they come up with their eyes and their head a bit. It's not a full extension of the spine. There's extension in the neck. And one of the things I hate hearing people is, well, Ed Cohn's different because he was a machine. But why is he different? Ed Cohn was a machine because he did it the same way every single time, and he freaking trained his butt off for years and years and years. Yeah. Same with Andy Bolton. It wasn't because they're freaks of nature and can get away with doing that. It's because that was part of why they were successful, is because that's how they did it. Yeah. So this whole thing, I still am trying to figure out what they think you're going to hurt with the head and the eyes raising a little bit. And again, I'm not saying you need to throw it all the way back, because I think there's some misinterpretation with that as well, which, like I said, you have the camp that takes that to the extreme, and they miss and I had this in-depth conversation with Priest, that's James's nickname, at one point, because he talked about he'd actually made the comment to me about throwing your head back, right? And that's really what you're doing. You're throwing your head back. As you throw your head back, it leads the whole body. Stand up from a chair, play with and watch what your head does, and do it. And I would just say, for fun, force yourself into this natural position and stand up, versus just stand up from a chair and see which one feels better, smoother, and actually it feels like a natural movement. And I'm going to bet it's number 2 without the neck packed, because you don't need to pack it. Should be this as part of your movement, that cervical retraction, but you don't have to tuck your chin and make the double chin and fire those extensors, or those deep neck flexors should already fire. And if they're not, it's weak, and you should probably go back to a foundational movement and train those before you pack a bunch of other crap on top of it.
Yeah, no, I remember a couple months ago we talked about this, because somebody had made a comment on one of my Instagram posts saying, like, and I was like, listen,
your swings were great, except,
well, the thing actually what it was is, it was a juxtaposition of a good swing versus a bad one. And the bad one was just a lot of knee movement. It was so. And here's the thing, like, your knees are supposed to move in the swing. We just don't want them to move forward into like sort of a squatty thing. So the purpose of it was to show, okay, you don't want your swing to look too squatty. But in both of them, my head was up. And this guy who was a physical therapist, I guess, said both of them are wrong because of this, that, and the other thing. And I was like, okay, well, I've only done like one arm swings with the beast, like without warming up, like for ages. So I feel like I know what I'm doing pretty well. The beast is 106-pound kettlebell. So, and I thought, okay, but I don't know exactly how I would be able, I didn't respond to him, but I didn't know exactly how I would respond to something like that, to something to me that seems so self-evident, because what you pointed out is exactly what people need to keep in mind. Your body is going to follow your head, and it's only natural to look up if you're going to be picking something up off the ground, squatting. There's no real need to look at the ground. And you mentioned something in that conversation that I thought was very useful. You said, okay, well, there's maybe a point to be had when there is no cervical retraction and extension. So it's like your chin's jutting forward and you're extending. So let's talk about that, because I think people do have an issue with that.
And so anterior head carriage, right? So if someone, I mean, there's research on this. I'm going to turn sideways for people watching it. If you have really poor head carriage, so meaning your head is in front of your shoulders where it should be versus back where it should be, much more like this. Yeah, doing extension like this, not a good thing, right? But it's not the extension that's a bad thing. It's the anterior head carriage that's a bad thing. And there's some studies on that show that anterior head carriage decreases your ability to produce force. Well, because it brings you, it screws up whole spinal alignment. Again, your body follows your head. So if you have this going on, what does that do to your thoracic spine? And then what does that do to your lumbar spine? And what does that do to your pelvis? It pulls it all out of position. It comes forward, or then you have to compensate for it because you have that. And you have the little old man that has really bad anterior head carriage that comes shuffling in my office and his head's out in front of him. His shoulders are back, his upper back's back, and his hips are shoved as far forward as they can to try to put the center of mass of the pelvis under the center of mass of the head, which is what one of the things our body wants, right? So we are designed this way. Okay, I know I'll go out on a limb here and some people will be offended. God designed us this way. I don't care if that offends people. God designed us this way because he's a lot smarter than we are. Our head should be over our center of mass of our hips. Why? Because it is more efficient for carrying our bodies, for transmitting force, for ambulation or movement. It's way more efficient. Mm-hmm. And as a smart science guy, he said, hey, you know how we should really design this like this because it makes sense. Exactly. That's why we have if your spine's not completely jacked up, and a lot of us are that way, nice forward lordotic curve in the neck, a kyphotic curve in the upper back, a lordotic curve in the lumbar spine, and another kyphotic curve with the sacrum. The problem is we lose our proper lordosis. People end up with forward anterior head carriage or forward head translation. Yes, and this is never a good place to be with forward head posture. Mm-hmm. So if you're not getting your neck back, retracted back, and you're doing, I will totally agree with them. I've actually watched you do swings. I don't know how many swings I've watched you do over the years because we've spent some time together at times. Yeah. Your head isn't out here. Yeah. And if your head's out there, you probably, my opinion, that needs to be fixed first. There's a lot of stuff you probably should avoid doing or reduce the weight that you're doing it with until you figure out how to fix that problem.
Right. Yeah, I think that's the big thing that people seem to miss is number one thing that you mentioned earlier, the happy medium, like trying to figure out, well, what's actually best for you? How's your body supposed to be functioning? And then how do you get to that point? Because more often than not, I mean, to some degree, your structure, your own individual structure is going to play a role, but there are certain principles of movement that your body has to be able to do in order to properly perform certain exercises. You'll definitely see people with forward head carriage doing swings and all manner of other things that they really should not be doing. But it doesn't mean that, okay, well, they can do it. So, I guess that's the proper way. And this is one of the reasons why I didn't respond to this guy, because I'm like, okay, true. I could just appeal to my own authority and say, yeah, I can swing the beast. So I really don't need to hear what you think, but it's not really an argument, I've heard so much of it, and that makes a lot more sense. What you're saying is this forward head carriage plus, number one, that being bad enough, plus you add extension onto it, that's going to cause some issues because you're already out of alignment. Your body is not moving the way that it's supposed to move. And now you're trying to get it to perform in this poor alignment. Is that right?
That's correct. And so if you look at, and we're not going to get into percentages or break it down to the minutest, but as you look at the neck, there are breakdowns in the different regions of the neck on primary movements, right? So C1, C2, right? That their primary movement is rotation. People don't realize that, how much of your rotation takes place between atlas and axis, the top two bones of the spine. That's where most of your cervical rotation, or a big chunk of it, comes from. We'll leave it at that, okay? Extension, now, it should take place throughout the whole cervical spine because the way the facets are shaped, right? They sit at a 45-degree angle sitting forward roughly. Okay, someone's might be a little bit steeper, some a little shallower, but it's designed for that flexion extension. There is room for quite a bit of flexion extension at the occiput and C1. And so, yes, if we're forward, all my extension is actually taking place in the upper cervical spine. Okay. And so, yep, you're going to lock up the occiput to atlas. And atlas and axis, their primary movement is rotation. So now you're already taking them out of their proper biomechanical use and throwing the force through it. And then you're going to try to transmit force through the whole body. It's not a good place to be. And it's not the extension by itself. It's the extension coupled with anterior head carriage. Not a good place to be.
Yeah.
And that's one of the problems with society. And there's controversy about this even within my profession. People, well, there's not a lot of research that says you get text neck or this. Look, man, it's pretty simple. Your body adapts to what you do to it all day, every day. And if you spend a bunch of time at a computer doing this or on a phone, things are going to shift forward and it's going to jack stuff up. So you need to do some things to correct that as well.
Yeah. Yeah, I agree. First of all, I'm glad to hear you say that, because even though I think that science is a great tool for us to learn more about the world around us, a lot of people use it more as a crutch to, how do I say this tactfully? They use it as a crutch to just like back up the things that they already believe. Like they'll find, oh, somebody did this research on this.
Confirmation bias.
Yeah, exactly. It's confirmation bias in many cases. And frankly, there are a lot of things that we can observe on our own that we can at least draw a reasonably good conclusion about without needing a double-blind study and all that.
And that's the problem, is we've misused science, right? So there are certain things that give to it, and really the double-blinded randomized controlled clinical trial works with, like, pharmaceutical intervention when done properly. That it works for that. There's a lot of things that fall much more into what's called natural history, is it natural history? Oh, good grief! Now my brain went blank. It'll come to me. Anyhow, it's more of the observational sciences, right? So I can observe your movements. There's things I can do that I can measure and that I can do that way through straight observation that give me valid information, and just as valid as a double-blinded randomized control because that doesn't necessarily apply to everything that you do, because there's a lot of like, so how do you do a placebo barbell squat? I mean, come on. You either know you've got a barbell on your shoulders and you're squatting, or you don't. I mean, if you don't know the difference, like it's like the whole Tommy Boy, like push the button and he'll beat you about the head with the head and shoulders, because if you can't figure out how to put the seatbelt in, kind of
You're
thing.
an idiot.
That's it. And so those things that need to be observed, and like you said, observation goes a long ways. And if you're waiting for the science to catch up, like the science is always behind people that are at the forefront of their fields, because the science then comes along and actually validates or tries to not validate what they just said or what they have shown over time. And again, like I said, observe. And I'm a big fan of, just like we said, watch some videos of Eddie Cohn squat and deadlift. Brad Gillingham's another strong dude from Minnesota. Watch him. And these people are like, they're not extending are their eyes, as there's not extension in their neck? You better check one more time, because if there wasn't, they'd be looking at the ground, and they're sure not looking at the ground.
Yeah.
Neither one of them were hyperextenders. Their head comes back and they're up. And it's amazing, because that's how we're designed. Again, neurologically, that's how we're designed. It makes sense. Yeah. Why do we change that? We're trying to cover for a weakness. Why not fix the weakness? And I think that it started, and because he's a brilliant dude, like Paul Chek's a brilliant guy. And I think some people took things that he said and they've applied them not necessarily in the same context as he might have been meaning for them as well. But, we tend to take our guru stuff. I think we're all guilty of it. I mean, and we try to push it to the hilt, right? Like it's always right, until someone can totally slap you in the face and show you that they might have been wrong.
Yeah. I think that's one thing that many people miss out on, particularly in the fitness industry, because like you said, people like to follow certain gurus. Now, I'm my own guru, so whatever I say goes, pretty much, But the big issue that you see with a lot of people, I think, is that they, like you said, they find something that they like or that they identify with, and then they try to apply it kind of indiscriminately. And I don't know enough. I like Paul Chek. I've followed a number of his things. So I'm sure you've got some examples in particular, but you see this all over the place, where it's like, I mean, I can give you some examples from some of my earlier students, and I told them about the importance of tension in their training. And so they were like, okay, so you got to keep your glutes tight. I'm going to try to tighten my glutes throughout the day, just like when I'm walking or doing, regular things. And I had to tell them, like, when you're not training, you don't really need to worry about all this tension. The tension is there for performance purposes. It's not, the day-to-day kind of thing. But that's a perfect example of it, is that they learn the value of one thing and then they misapply it to things where it's not necessary.
Exactly. I'd agree 100%. And you give a wonderful example, feed forward tension. There's a time and a place for it. It's just
Yeah.
not all the time in every place. I mean, there's
Yeah.
a lot of things that are that way in our lives, right? That there's a wonderful time and a place for this tool. I mean, I have this, right? It's a hard lacrosse ball.
Yep.
Number one, is it good or bad? Well, no, it's a ball. So it's neither one. Does it have a place and a use? The answer is yeah. Now, some might disagree with its use, but can I find a use for it in self-care and stuff? The answer is yes. Yes, I can. Is this going to fix a torn rotator cuff? No. Is it going to fix the torn labrum in my shoulder or the detached long head of my right bicep? It's not going to fix it. No. Can I use it to decrease some of the spasm around the shoulder as I'm rehabbing stuff? Yep, sure can. So that's the problem, is that we do, like I said, and I think you hit it. We forget that we're emotional beings, and we all try to play that we're super smart and it's always logical. We make a lot of actually the majority of our decisions are made emotionally, and then we try to back them up with the logic after we've made the decision.
All of them, yeah.
I find something that I love and identify well with, and I do well when I do that. So then I take that and I try to make that the rule for everybody and everything. And that's ridiculous. That's not how it works.
It's been said that humans aren't rational, they rationalize.
Yep. I would agree with 100%. And because you kind of alluded to something a little bit earlier, you talked about our own body's structure, right? Structure and function are intertwined in a way that people tend to, because they play off of each other. So our set structure does, I mean, this joint in my finger does this. It will not act like a shoulder joint. It's not a ball and socket joint. It's a hinge joint. It will not be a ball and socket joint no matter what. Right. But how effectively, how functional I am with it, that becomes a whole nother issue. And that function can actually drive how well I move said finger, how fast or slow, or how strong it is. I mean, but those things are married in a way that can never be divorced, period. Mm-hmm. That's the one marriage you can't break. Look at people's hip structures. We know some people are really good at squatting, and part of that's hip structure. And some guys, they have to have a really wide stance, and they are powerhouses with a wide stance. If you put them in a narrow stance, they suck, because their hip structure. You have other guys that their hip structure gives to a narrower stance, and they are powerhouses when they squat. Captain Kirk, right? Kirk Kowalski. Look how narrow his squat stance was compared to what most powerlifters today is. Mm-hmm. There's the video on the internet where he doubles 1,000, right? Or 1,000 with a much narrower stance than they use today. Did you see the legs on the guy?
They're like tree trunks.
Yeah, he's got quads that don't stop. It fit his structure, and he was a much narrower stance squatter than Ed Cohn. One of the guys that was prominent at the same time. There was a 220 lifter that was also 5'6", right? Ed's got a much wider stance, yet he hit 1,002 pounds in the squat, right? Phenomenal. What do you say? They're both right, but they had to be right for their body types. Mm-hmm. So we take that out too as well. So that goes back to the forward head stuff. There's structural things that you might not be able to change that structure. So we have to figure out how to be efficient around that structure with our functionality.
Certainly. Definitely. Now, when we're talking about all of these things, whether it's strength training or any other kind of performance, we talked about forward head carriage and what causes it. We've also talked about, hey, look, okay, maybe there are no studies about quote unquote text neck, but we already know what the body does when you give it the same input over and over and over again. It's just, you're going to get a consequence from that, whether it's good or bad. So when we talk about trying to put things back the way that they used to be, of course, you and I are both big fans of original strength. And so why don't we talk about that? Let's say you do have somebody who's, number one, they sit all day for work. They do a lot of texting. They're always kind of finding themselves in this hunched forward position. How can, and let's say they're also in their 40s, 50s, something like that. And they want to kind of start getting back into better shape. They want to get stronger. They want to get more resilient. How does original strength help with other activities? I know you've been a power lifter before. You are, I don't know if you still do any powerlifting, but.
Now I kind of shifted gears in my life. I love strength sports, and I love, I got buddies that, they're just strong as all get out. I think I just got to the point where I want to do something else with my life, and I found something that I like. And so I shifted gears that night. Those people that don't know me on here, I used to be almost 320 pounds when I was my fattest. And so like I would fill this whole screen and it looked like I got stung by like a bee or something, and it was
That's why I
swollen.
waited so long to do this interview.
And every time I see pictures of that, I'm like, oh my gosh. And then I make comments to my wife that it's like, I can't believe that you would even consider having children with me. Holy cow. You deserve a medal. And then she laughs at me and tells me I was still handsome and lies to me, but which makes me feel good.
Yeah.
But powerlifting for me was also probably an unhealthy place when it came to my relationship with food. Because they just eat more, get bigger, get stronger, eat more, get bigger, get stronger. It just wasn't a healthy place to be. And so I never broke the habit of high school. Hey, you got to eat until you hurts and eat some more so you can gain weight for football. So there's a lot of reasons I decided to change gears, and I'm happy for it because I enjoy rucking and doing some of the fun stuff with Go Ruck and those kind of things. And so, but you talked about this original strength, like how can you do it? And I'm 46 now, and I love like hearing my friends that are my age that like whine and piss and moan about how bad their life is and how bad they feel. And I'm like, I feel better at 46 than I did at 40.
Yeah.
I mean, so it's not your age, it's the crap that you're not doing and the crap that you are doing. So some of the sedentary, look, man, number one, you need to get moving. Like that's I'm gonna make it super simple. Go for a walk once in a while, like every day. I mean, that is something that's simple. And I tell my patients that all the time. And it's funny when someone's like, what can I do for my back? Go for a walk. No, but like for my back, walk.
Wow.
Walk. Give me 10 minutes out and 10 minutes back. Once you start doing that,
you know what you need to do? You need to block off every parking spot in the parking lot of your office. And like parking's 10 minutes away. You're gonna park 10 minutes away and you're gonna walk to my office. And then by the time you get there, you're already gonna feel better. And then you're gonna walk back. That's your walking for the day. Okay. I want to see you back here tomorrow. So on and so forth.
And it's stuff like that. So from original strength standpoint, because we spend so much time in flexion in society now, like I mean, we came out of the womb all flexed up, and then we're supposed to like develop our secondary curves and have that nice forward curve in the neck and the nice forward curve in the low back. And we get that through crawling and actually through everything we teach in original strength. And then we go to school and destroy it and get a job and destroy it even more. And then we wonder why we feel like crap. So things that I would tell us, it's like if you're that 45-year-old guy and you're like, dude, I just want to change stuff. Number one, it's not a sprint, it's a marathon. Because in the words of our illustrious friend Huggy McNiff, you didn't get fat overnight. You're not going to get lean overnight. Okay, you didn't screw yourself up overnight, so you're not gonna unjack those things overnight. So take that out of your head and start looking. Hey, what am I going to feel like a year down the road, 2 years down the road, 3 years down the road? I think that's the first place people need to focus. We look long term, like pretend like you're Chinese and you're taking the 100-year view on stuff, not American and taking I want it yesterday. Okay. And I'm an ugly American with everybody else, dude. I love my comforts. Don't get me wrong. But start there and then extension stuff. So we talk about head nods, right? So I'm a big fan of getting on all fours in quadruped position and head nods and really being able to get into extension and flexion, and just starting with that because we spend so much time tucked forward that, well, we spend so much time like this. And then we wonder why our deep neck flexors don't work because they can't even turn on at this point because we're just hanging. I'd say start with those things. So I'm a huge fan of the head nods with people. I'm a huge fan of just rocking, looking at the horizon. So, oh my gosh, it's cervical extension. But if you get into quadruped, Alex, have you noticed how you naturally have cervical retraction with your extension?
Yeah, I don't even think about it.
Cool. You don't even have to think about it. It just because it just does it. Unless you have a really, really horrible forward head posture, it just does it. So those are two great places to start. Rocking with your head up and just head nods in that position. I love doing that. The other thing that I really enjoy is, we call it TV watching position. I don't know, on your belly with all fours, cobra position, whatever your fancy. And I make fun of yoga people here.
Position.
Is that what it is? Yeah.
I usually say TV watching because the people that I teach are old enough to remember when TVs were still on the ground, So
or when they were set up, you'd like lay on the back and then on the living room floor, and that's how it's because there wasn't a chair for you. Because I had 3 older brothers, and the couch was taken, and Dad had the nice chair, and I'm on the floor, dude.
Yeah.
So it didn't matter.
Exactly.
Those are great positions to do those head nods and the head rotations, right? Just turning the head, regaining control of the cervical spine is huge. The other thing tied with that is eyes, right? So something that I think because we spend so much time doing this. Eyes, like we lose that. So we tend to lose, or it decreases those things that are hardwired, and we can get them back. So I always teach all my patients, it's always exaggerate. Eyes go all the way up, then you move your head, then eyes go down, and you're trying to see that spot where you spilled the ketchup on your shirt at the barbecue. I use little cues like that. If you're turning to the right, your eyes go all the way to the right, then your head turns. If it goes to the left, your head turns. Those are great places to start. And then the other thing, I mean, the number one rule, right? Don't move into pain. If it hurts, don't force it.
Mm-hmm.
And I describe this with patients all the time. It's a barrier, right? So if it's the pain barrier, up here hurts. We can bump up against it, but you want to keep that movement in ranges that are down here, because over time, this moves up and we can continue to move our head more. So those small movements start to create big movements. A lot of our issues come because our body locks it down for a couple of reasons. One, it's efficient. Hip flexors get short when you sit all the time because it's efficient to be short. Your glutes shut off when you sit because it's efficient. I don't need to burn energy to do that. That's why they do that. Can you reverse that? The answer is yes. Stop sitting all the time, or find positions that you can take you out of that. That's where I like being on the belly, because it stretches out those hip flexors without you having to stretch out your hip flexors. Those are simple things. And I like the rocking as well, because you're integrating arms and arms and our shoulders and hips. You're getting some of those movements back, so those things are tied together like they should be. And you can progress up the chain, right? I like a lot of rotational stuff as we get older. The more people I see get hurt in rotational patterns I think rotational patterns cause more damage than flexion extension patterns for people. Even the dreaded rounded low back, I tend to find people get hurt way more with rotational stuff because we can't handle rotational forces.
Yeah, people don't really do a lot of it. And, if you think about it, it makes sense, because there's an element of rotation and walking. People aren't doing enough walking. Everything they do is, they're in this kind of flex position. Yeah, they might stretch every once in a while too. So they're getting some extension now and again, but they're mostly stuck in flexion. And then it's like the second that they have to twist, either to, grab something in the back seat or whatever, next thing you know, I just pulled something hurts, I can barely breathe. And yeah, I would have to agree. One of the reasons that I think some of the original strength resets in particular are so good is it's like, let's say segmental rolling, for example, is just a very easy way to get people gently reintroduced to this rotation, so that when it needs to be done quickly, let's say sprinting out of the way of like a vehicle careening on the sidewalk because the teenager driving it was making a TikTok video, or I don't know what these Zoomers do, but this is what I imagine is happening when all these accidents go on. It's going to come in really handy. So you have to prepare for the real world. And, back squatting super heavy is obviously very cool. But if you blow your back out just trying to pick up a washcloth because you twisted a little bit too much as you were doing it, all that strength isn't really worth all that much.
Yep. And you kind of hit it. Like I think my mind shifted at some point. Like I just like to be able to do stuff. I've got four daughters, and they tend to be like, I find great joy in just doing stuff with my kids. Throughout this, when I was almost 320 pounds, like I couldn't do it. And that's embarrassing to say as a dude when you're like, oh man, I'm getting up and down. Oh, this sucks. And it's like I said, strength's cool, but I like to have the real world application, and it's learning those things. And so segmental rolling is fantastic. And not everyone can get up and down on the floor. There's modifications, even just teaching people how to even just, control stuff with the crossbody twist. It's amazing how many people, I don't know, they're motor morons, and I don't know how to put it. And I'm not saying that as in a bad way, like that but they are, because they've lost what they had because they just stopped using it. Yeah. It's in there and they can get it back, but it's just going to take a little bit of work. And it's amazing. That's one of the things that I love about original strength. And yes, I'm an original strength groupie, and that's part of why I teach for original strength and I promote original strength, because it works. It's very effective. And it just takes you back to how you developed everything to start with. So why not reuse those patterns to re-engage all those processes that you've lost? Yeah. And I know I've heard all you stopped crawling, so you never need to crawl again. Shut up. Yeah. I mean, you learn how to walk, so you should never have to walk again. That's the same kind of attitude. It's like, no, because if you don't walk all the time, your walking gets horrible. Watch some of the older patients that I have that the last 2 years have been horrible for someone because they never left their apartment.
Yeah.
And now they're weak and they're on walk. They have walkers, and it breaks my heart. Cause I'm like, dude, like 2 years ago, you like pounced in here and pounced out. Now you can't. Now you're like, because you didn't stay strong because you didn't do anything. So you'll lose those things. So crawling is fantastic for prepping. I'm not saying you'd replace your walking with crawling, unless you're kind of crazy like Tim or Chad and you decide a mile's away. It's a great way to crawl. I don't see that at this point in my life, but
Yeah.
it's a great prep, you know?
Yeah. I do have to laugh at that when people are like, like, oh, well, you're not supposed to crawl after you've done it as a kid. It's like, okay, well, this is one of those things where I remember Brett Contreras, who's very well known. He's known as the glute guy. He's all over social media. You'll find his stuff. But he wrote an article a number of years ago where he talked about, like, if you know how to use enough scientific language, you can make every exercise sound dangerous or not functional, whatever it is. And so nobody really tries to make crawling sound dangerous, but they try to make it sound useless. And it's like, man, all anybody has to do is just put it to the test. No one's claiming that it's a panacea, but I have yet to meet anybody who has not seen some positive result from crawling. And I don't mean positive result like, oh, that was a good workout. But like, again, I mentioned my 9-minute challenge earlier. I get people who email me all the time, like, my military presses got way easier after I started crawling, or like my squats feel better. Like I had somebody just the other day say, I realized that I had so little mind muscle connection that's why all my kettlebell stuff felt so crappy when I was doing it. Like now, since I've started doing this, I feel way more connected and so on and so forth. And so um, it's a perfect example of people using seemingly scientific positions to just, completely dismiss anything that anybody could observe or experience on their own.
Yeah. And that's again, there's the danger, one of the dangers of the science, you know what I mean?
Science worship.
Because it becomes its own god, and you're like, time out. That's not, science is supposed to be a quest for knowledge, right? That's been the whole point of what science is supposedly supposed to be about. I mean, that's what I was taught is about. I mean, that's the whole point of the scientific method is, hey, I think this is true, and I'm going to do everything under the sun to see that it's not true. Because then if I can't prove that it's not true, then it obviously becomes inherently true because I can't prove it's not true. So again, like I said, so then prove me wrong. Start crawling. Just start crawling. Do nothing else but crawl. Baby crawl for 5 minutes a day every day. Do that for a couple of weeks and then come back and talk to me and tell me how useless you found it. Because if you found zero benefit in that, I probably would eat my tennis shoe. I mean,
like I would eat theirs.
I mean, it's like, dude, like seriously, I've seen it with my own children. One of the coolest things. So I got to help teach a pressing reset workshop with Tim a few years back up in the cities, and my wife went through the workshop because I think she just gets tired of hearing me talk. Go figure. She doesn't like my long-winded conversations about anything scientific because she just eyes glaze over. But it was cool because I think we were just doing rocking, and then, we always do the test and retest. And all of a sudden, she like freaking like did like a ass to grass squat, and she was just like, "Whoa!" Just like blown away. Well, it's not that she could never squat; it's the fact that her brakes were put on, and all of a sudden, when her brain and her body were tied back together, and she realized that the brain realized I'm safe, she freaking nails this squat and was like, "I can't believe how awesome that felt." And I'm in my mind, I'm like, "Yeah, I wish you would have listened to me. I don't know, a couple years ago." But she's my wife, and she's,
it won't work. The told you so. Calm down. These things just they don't have.
Yeah, and I don't. So I didn't say a word. I was just like totally smile. Excuse me, totally smile. I was like, yes, and I let Tim address it because I've learned.
and Tim was like, "No, you really should listen to your husband."
Yeah, no, exactly. And we both got yelled at and had to sit in the corner.
Exactly. Like on the break, she's like, "Can I speak to you both outside?"
So sure that's the cool stuff, and that's so. Yes, we were in our kind of our I don't know prep sessions. We're just, hey, what's some things? So I've got huge into rucking. I know it's probably weird, and any of your guys that follow you that are former military might have the same attitude as some of our other friends. Like, ask Huggy about rucking sometime. Huggy's like,
sure he hates it.
Oh, dude, he's like, you can tell people that Uncle Sam never forced you to ruck march because you guys enjoy that stuff. I got a good buddy that same thing. He spent time in the sandbox, and he's just like, dude, rucking sucks. What are you doing? And I'm like, I find it fun. Like, I find fulfillment and enjoyment in doing that. And it's the weirdest thing because the reality is you're putting a backpack on your back with weight in it and you're just walking. like forever walking.
Yeah.
And it gets that way. And I mean, I did a 26.2 miles last April, like a year ago in April. Why? Because it was a challenge thrown out. And I did it actually faster than the first time I tried to run a marathon when I was
Wow.
like 165 pounds. I beat that time by 8 minutes.
It's impressive.
So, um, but rucking, like if you want to figure out that there's rotation in walking, put a rucksack on your back and walk. You start to feel that little bit of rotational stuff. And if you're weak, you'll get stronger or you'll get hurt. One of the two. And I think that's why some people hate rucking is they got hurt doing it because they overload them, especially in the military. They're like, there's 250 pounds, put it on your back. Let's go 20 miles. And they get hurt because they weren't ready for it. Although I think they've gotten a lot better in the recent years because they've done a ton of research on it. That being said, it's a great movement. So things that I like to do before I ruck, I'm doing rocking, and I like to do like kickstand rocking as well, just to really make sure everything's moving in the hips, the hamstrings aren't like all locked up, that the, you know, and so that's one of my favorite go-tos. I'm with you. I love rolling, like belly to back or back to belly. I love rolling, especially upper body stuff. It is fantastic, and it is great for getting that rotational strength. Those are things that I like to do as part of my prep for going for rucks. And then rucking in and of itself, it is a reset because it's just a gait pattern under a load for a long distance. And so, or a shorter distance, depending on the day. But those are the simple things that you can do in your life, and it makes a huge difference. And I think that's part of why I started enjoying it, is because I feel really good when I ruck. And I think a big part's because I'm just loading the gait pattern and walking forever.
Yeah.
And I think it's because my brain allows me to put my brain into different places that it doesn't normally get to go.
Definitely. I think that's one of the things about endurance sports or endurance activities that are different from strength. With strength, you need mental toughness, but it's all like focused into a very small period of time. You know, you might have like 15 seconds or less, and you got to have this insanely intense focus. And then with endurance, you know, you got to be able to draw it out. And I feel that I personally find that to be more challenging to draw it out for a longer period of time. Yeah, it's a whole different mindset, it's a whole different mentality, and it's really a whole different like physical set of skills.
See, and I think it is. Thank you. See, anyone listening now, Alex is super smart, and whatever he says, just do it. I mean, I'm going to give you that props, but no, because I think you hit why that's why I like it. Because, dude, when you're getting ready for a big squat, it's a very short, intense, like burnt, and then you're done. Like, go do 10 miles, like, and see where your brain, like, your mind starts to go places, because that part of your brain that wants to protect you, you start to hear it start to chatter. Like,
Yeah, like
oh,
you can
you
quit.
quit. Oh, just go home. You're tired, and you get these little, and I think that's part of it. Is I feel more accomplished when I'm like, dude, shut up, because I'm gonna punish you now because you just said go home at 8 miles, and now we're doing 12. And I've done that to myself, where you're like, you start feeling like that. Oh, I just want to quit, and then and what do? I'm like, oh, I guess that 5 miles is now 8 miles. Go,
Yeah.
and all of a sudden that voice goes away, and you just say that because it's a different way to focus. And I think that's part of, again, remember that when we started this, I said you need to take a long view. Like, we get so focused. Yeah, everyone wants to have a powerlifter's focus. Hey, dude, if I focus for 30 seconds for this set of 2, I'm good. And that's great if you're powerlifting. But again, does it apply to everything that you're doing in your life, or the things that you really want to do in your life? And if it's not, that longer view is where you need to be. And even with powerlifting, Ed Cohn, if you read stuff that Ed Cohn wrote and listen to him talk, Ed talked about his programming, and he was meticulous about his programming, because he knew he was going to compete 2, maybe 3 times a year most of the time as he got really good and got a little bit older. And everything was programmed, though. He knew sets, reps, everything down to the rep for every workout. Like, and that's what he did. And his attitude was, if I hit every rep in training and I've been doing my nutrition like I'm supposed to, then I should go 9 for 9 every freaking time and walk away with the trophy that says I'm the strongest dude here.
Mm-hmm.
And that's no different than life, right? So what do we need to do to prep ourselves? If you're sedentary, I'm going to get your 9-minute thing because I want to play with it, Alex. Because Alex does throw out some really good stuff, and I'm gonna pump you up a little bit and make your ego grow, guys. Alex is a super smart dude, so I'm not sure that most of you that are following him understand that. But I came to Alex and asked him just for some little advice on something that I'd set up. I'm going to train for something completely way out of my comfort zone even for this. It's called the Jag 28. It's a hero wad dedicated to a guy that's his call sign was Jaguar 28 that was killed in action. And it's 28 miles of rucking. So you have a 28-pound rucksack, and on every mile you're supposed to do 28 push-ups. And that's your workout. So I'm going to tell you right now, I did 26.2 without push-up time, and it was 7 hours and 18 minutes. So this is a long day.
Yeah.
That's why I came to Alex and said, hey, man, what do you think of this as a way to approach starting to get the push-ups in? Because the reality is I actually just detached the long head of my right bicep at the beginning of June. Gardening. Full-fledged gardening.
I wonder what you're planting exactly.
It was actually the planting box that I was lifting that I shouldn't have been lifting. Yeah. So, but that being said, like, here's a plug for OS, guys. Like, I'm back to pretty much full everything right now with almost no pain. And that was 6 weeks ago. Now, I'm not telling everyone that you're going to do that and seek medical advice and stuff. But I know at my age, they're not going to reattach it. And they're just going to say, let it scar down and leave it alone. Because they already cut the one on this side when they had to repair my shoulder. So it's just, to me, it's like, whatever. But I came to Alex and he said, hey, what do you think of this? And Alex said, oh, it looks good. You might want to think about this, this, and this. And gave me a couple of things to think about when it came to helping prevent developing imbalances and potential injuries when it comes to doing all those push-ups. And so I've implemented those things. Why? Because I know Alex knows bodyweight training like nobody else. And the funny thing is last week, I mean, I was dragging butt, dude. And Wednesday I was over for the day. The way I break it up was over 300 for the day. Wow. So like, to say that I started out a week ago, Monday at 100, I think I did 100 for the day to jump to 300. And yesterday I took the day off. You said, listen to your body. So yesterday I woke up and went, nope. And today I'm just over 200 right now for the day so far. So, but I'm also listening to what you said and taking some of that. I'm taking that into account as I've set up my program. So guys, like, Alex knows his stuff. So if you are, okay, this is a shameless plug for a friend, but he knows his crap. So if you're looking for like, dude, I just need help with the program. Dude, like, don't be cheap. Like, get a hold of Alex and seriously get it, because he knows his stuff. And I'm blown away at, like, because I haven't been doing push-ups like that, guaranteed. I mean, I'll tell you that my training has not been like that, and to jump like that, and to feel really good. So props to you for giving me a little advice, and I appreciate that. And so guys, like, anyone that's listening, like, do yourself a favor and hit Alex up for advice.
Yeah, I appreciate it. I'm very glad it's helping you too, because I know that you've got a whole lot on your plate in terms of that challenge. Because I remember looking at it and thinking, man, I would not want to do it, but if I had to, this is what I would do.
And the reality is, like, I could fail. Like, I decided to. Is it in the comfort crisis that he talks about that? It might be. Like, you really need to pick something like that you have a 50% chance of failing at, right? Like, yeah. You could fail, but go give it a shot anyhow, man, because you got to push yourself. And when I saw the challenge initially, I was like, oh, that's bad crap crazy, dude.
Yeah.
But then I was like,
I'm bad crap crazy.
Shoot, let's do it. And so it was a fit. And so the reality is, like, I do OS stuff. Like, guys, I warm up for every workout. It's original strength. Mm-hmm. I kind of have a set one that I've been doing right now because I'm teaching it to my children. We're homeschooling as well, because why not do everything at once? Yeah. And so that's part of their PE time, right? And so I'm teaching them those things as part of their PE stuff, and that's the warm up for our workouts. And then our number 2 daughter Taylor has become my workout buddy, and so she's full-fledged into, hey, I want to do everything that dad does. And so then we have to temper that because she's 14, or 13, not freaking 46. But
right,
it's cool that way. And so it's simple enough that my almost 8-year-old is picking up how to do it and play with it. And I mean, hers is focus, and she can do everything that you want her to do OS wise. It's just, will she do it? But she's getting benefit out of it, and you can make it fun. So that's one of the awesome things about it. So that's my plug for OS too. You got to check it out. So if Alex has stuff tied together that he's given out, if you haven't got it yet, you're as dumb as I am, and I'm actually going to get it after we get off here. So,
well, I'll tell you, if you were as dumb as Mike, you would still be quite a smart chap, because that's exactly why I had him on, and it was very enlightening. All the cool stuff that you have talked about here. Now, I know you don't really have, I mean, I guess people could follow you online, but you don't really post a whole lot or anything like that. But if anybody happens to be in a very small town in Minnesota, how would they look you up? Meaning to get chiropractic care, not to waste your time with.
Honestly, my clinic's Musselman Family Chiropractic. Just look it up, give me a call. I mean, that's the easiest way to do it. Or I guess you could look for me on the original strength instructors page as well. That's probably the only other place. I should probably figure out all the cool stuff you do online, but
I think it sounds to me like you don't need one more thing to add. You've got, the homeschooling the kids, you're doing the PE lessons, you're taking on this challenge. So we'll think about the online stuff later. But I think
I'll probably have to talk to you about that sometime.
I'll be happy to help you out. We'll spread the word, and your nickname is going to have to be Mike Musselman, as opposed to.
Man, I want a cool one like you have, though. I mean, Alex the Hebrew Hammer. I mean,
how about the Mormon Mallet? What about that?
Ooh, see, now I can get on. I like that. See, now you got a nickname for me.
Absolutely. And it works because somebody else gave it to you. See, somebody else gave me the Hebrew Hammer as a nickname. Now, obviously, they didn't just make it up because there's a movie called The Hebrew Hammer, but two different people, at least one of whom Steve Holliner. He called me the Hebrew Hammer many years ago, and then another mutual friend of ours independently called me the Hebrew Hammer as well. And so I was like, well, I'm the Hebrew Hammer. So you've got one vote at the very least for the Mormon Mallet. And I think you should, with a Mormon machete, I don't know. I mean, you find like some sort of like a tool. Well, that's just going to be like the technique. There's like, your religious affiliation and some sort of like a tool or I don't know, like a device. I just feel like that would be a good approach.
I like that.
It works. I didn't create the technique, but I'm happy to look at the pattern and see how we can carry it on.
That's what smart guys do, is find a pattern and then figure out how to make the pattern work for them.
Absolutely. The very, very smart guys, I'm told.
Yes.
The ones whose 9-minute challenge you should definitely go download if you have not done that already.
I believe that's 9, the number 9, yep. Challenge.com, right?
9-minute challenge. You're right. You are done. Just kidding. 9-minute challenge. I should buy 9 challenge actually, because I realized somebody asked me once, is it like spelled out NINE? And I'm like, I should buy that because people are going to hear that and they're going to be like NINE minute challenge. So I'm going to buy as many iterations of that as I can.
And sometimes when you put just a little bit different for a website you're searching for, the stuff that comes up, you're like, whoa, that's not the 9-minute challenge I was talking about. It's supposed to be kettlebells. What the heck was that?
Honey, let me explain, okay?
Alex said he had a cool program, and that's not it.
This is not the program, okay? Because he's not on this page. Look very closely. He's nowhere to be found on this page. Yeah. So at any rate, folks, remember 9minutechallenge.com. And that's just number 9minutechallenge.com. If you put anything else and you get something weird or funky, I had nothing to do with it, right? You misspelled it. That's on you. But that's neither here nor there. Mike, thank you very much for coming on the show.
I appreciate it, man. It's always a pleasure.
The pleasure has been mine. And folks, as always, have fun and happy training.